Hi, I'm Roland Yarborough with Away From It All TV. I know there are 50 billion videos on the internet about how to make fire, but after talking to a lot of people, we here at Away From It All TV have come to learn that most people who are not outdoor aficionados, bushcraft, survival, hunting, fishing, camping, hiking, they're not involved in those activities. When you talk to them about making fire, which we know is the most critical skill set anybody in the outdoors needs to possess, when you talk to these folks about making fire, when the conversation moves beyond match and lighter, most of them are at a complete loss as to what to do next. We're going to try to do our part, in spite of all the videos that are already on the internet, to help that, because there are just so many people who don't seem to know. So we're starting a series of videos here at Away From It All TV entitled Fire University. And we're going to start with the next easiest thing to learn and most effective thing to learn how to use to make fire past open flame sources of fire, and that is a ferrocerium rod. And we're going to go all the way from a ferro rod to primitive friction fires. So I thought what we'd do today is take a little hike through the woods and just stop at some different places, find some interesting things to look at. And while we're out there, I'll share my thoughts with you on what a ferro rod is and how they work. And then in the next video, we'll go to the steps of how to strike a ferro rod, and then we'll continue on in our process all the way to primitive fire. So stay with me, and we're going to get started right after this. Now, to somebody who doesn't know what they're looking for, that looks like an old rotten log. But the truth is, that's one of the greatest fire-starting resources in the whole woods. What may look like an old rotten log to the average passerby, to somebody who knows what they're looking for, this is a piece of fat lighter. Pitchwood, greasewood, fatwood, whatever you want to call it, it's a piece of pine that has died, and the pine sap has collected in it, and it usually has very sharp angles. And the way you prove it and test it is take your knife or hatchet or axe, whatever you've got, cut a piece off, peel it up, and smell it. And if it smells like pine or turpentine or household pine cleaner, that's what you want. It's one of the best fire starters in the whole woods of the eastern woodlands. Fat lighter's your friend when you need a fire. All right, let's talk about ferro rods for a minute. I call them ferro rods or ferrocerium rods. They're also called fire steels. They're called mish metal. They're called metal matches. Some people erroneously call them flints. This is not a flint. A flint's a rock. And this is not a flint and steel. Flint and steel is a whole different thing. Flint and steel makes sparks about 800 degrees. This makes sparks in molten globs of metal that burn at about 5,000 to 5,500 degrees Fahrenheit, and it will catch a lot of things on fire. Ferro rods are made up of an amalgam of pyrophoric materials, meaning they will ignite. A lot of magnesium in here, a lot of iron, and a lot of rare earth elements and rare earth minerals are compressed together in the shape of a rod or a cylinder or a square to create a ferrocerium rod. All right, for those of you who are into trapping, you can look down here, the base of this old fallen tree. You can see how the dirt around here seems freshly disturbed. And way back in the corner, far back up in there, you can see that there's a hole that's been dug. I think we found a critter's home. If I were going to be trapping, I'd look at setting a trap in this area, right by this old fallen log. I think we found somebody's bedroom. So the premise of a ferrocerium rod and how it works is like this. We take a striker, which is a sharp edge, 90 degrees or less, and any material harder than the metal of a ferro rod. Most ferro rods aren't very hard, even though they're metal, they're soft metal. And any material like steel, a flint, a piece of glass, and several other kinds of materials will work well to strike the rod. As we drive the material off the rod, and as we take the striker and forcefully move it down the rod, not just the length of the rod, but also while exerting downward pressure, that removes material from the mass of the rod and makes it spark into the air. Well, that does three things. The friction creates heat, so the three legs of fire are heat, oxygen, and fuel. The friction creates the heat. When you release these particles from the mass of the rod into the air, that imparts oxygen to them, and the fuel is the pyrophoric material itself. So we have heat, air, and fuel, the three legs of fire. So here's what it looks like when we strike a ferrocerium rod. You know, a lot of people wonder, where do you find dry wood when it's been raining for 6 days in a row? That's where you find it, right there. It's a piece of dead, standing wood. Doesn't really matter what kind it is. At the base of this dead, standing tree, it's probably 6 inches in diameter. You saw that down or chop it down with an axe and cut down into it. It doesn't matter how long it's been raining. In the center of that piece of wood, you're going to find dry material. You can carve up in little shavings, make feather sticks, make scrapings with the back of your knife, whatever, and you can make fire. Always be willing to look, think outside the box, and do a little work to get material for your fire. Ferrocerium rods come in a variety of shapes, sizes, and price points. I've got just a few here I wanted to show you. This one is kind of expensive, from $25 to $35. Very small ferro rod. Comes with a very small striker, in my opinion, too small. In cold weather especially, a striker that small can be very difficult to work with when you lose some of your small motor skills because of cold weather. It also has an orange O-ring there to keep the ferrocerium rod dry. Kind of unnecessary, because you can dip a ferro rod in the water, leave it there for half an hour, come back, shake it off, wipe it off, and it'll make fire immediately. This is another small ferrocerium rod. You can get this at your local discount department store in the sporting goods area for about $7. It works just as well as that one. Actually, the striker is far superior. You can see it's a lot bigger. I'll demonstrate these in our next video and how to strike a ferro rod. This is my everyday carry ferrocerium rod. As you can see, I have drilled a hole in it and I've affixed a lanyard of paracord big enough for my thumb and finger to go through when I have a glove on. The only reason that's there is so I can hold it as I strike it so it won't slip out of my hands. I have a variety of handle material too, wood, deer antler, all kinds of things. This is a larger ferrocerium rod. Oh, by the way, this one is 4 inches long and 3/8 inch diameter, and it's square. And I carry this one in my pocket because it's square, because if I drop it, it won't roll away. This is a round one. This one goes on the fire steel loop of the case of my survival knife. It's 4 inches long, 3/8 inches in diameter. I made this Fatwood or fat lighter handle and glued it on with epoxy. Some people say they won't stay on. This one's been on there a long time. It's done very well. This one's about $8 online. Here's one you can buy at the local sporting goods shop. Bigger rod, 1/2 inch in diameter, but only about 1.5 inches long. Comes in a nice plastic housing though, and it will produce some nice sparks. Bigger striker, anywhere from about $9 up to about $19 depending on where you buy it. And this is sort of the Mac Daddy. It's 6 inches long, 1/2 inch in diameter. You can get a lot of work done with this ferrocerium rod. This is my favorite. When I'm out in the field, a ferrocerium rod of this size is usually with me. Right here on the trail I'm walking, you can see that old dead stump and the tree that's fallen right there. That's been dead long enough that some of that wood's probably going to be punky, or as some call it, punk wood. Let's take a look. All right, what we're looking for on this old dead standing stump is wood that is dry and spongy and light. And some of it qualifies and some doesn't. Here's a piece right here. This is very spongy. It's very lightweight. That's going to be, when you char that, that's going to make excellent char material. And the great thing about this, as opposed to char cloth, you can find this all over the woods if you know what to look for. Remember, crumbleability, light, dry, dead, punk wood. All right, I've got a small bird nest here comprised of the inner barks from a tulip poplar branch. I've got my smallest ferro rod with my least favorite striker, just to demonstrate to you that they will produce. We'll talk about preparation of materials, strikers, how to use them, different things you can use in our next video. But now I just want to demonstrate that even the least among the ferro rods will make fire. There you have it. You know, none of us wants to have a close encounter of the no-shoulders kind, and when the weather gets warmer, the snakes start crawling. One of the things I see a lot of people do is they'll walk up to an old fallen log and they'll just step right over it. That's something you might want to reconsider. My dad always taught me, never step across an old log, because right under the back side of that log, right up under there or anywhere up against the back side of that log, there could be a snake. And if you step across that log without knowing what's on the other side of it, and a lot of times the snake will lay right up against a log like that, you step over him, his initial response may be to bite you. So stand up on the log first, look over it, make sure there's not a snake, then step on across and go on your merry way. We don't want to get bitten by Mr. No-Shoulders. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed this introductory discussion on ferrocerium rods, what they're made of, how we use them, the basic 101 entry-level concepts of ferrocerium rods. As we move on in Fire University here at Away From It All TV, we're going to be talking about strikers, how we actually strike the rod, the various things you can use to strike a rod. Then we'll move into preparation of materials, a proper fire lay, and then we'll get into other fire making methods. We appreciate the views so much. Thanks for the likes and the shares. Hey, subscribe to our channel, Away From It All TV, and above all things, get out there and take somebody with you. Hey, get away from it all, where dreams are restored in the great outdoors.